So many borders, so many flags, so many strange shapes. While most countries look like what you'd expect, neat outlines, maybe a little jagged around the edges, some of them went full Picasso. Twisted borders, strange curves, slices through other countries, or hundreds of pieces scattered across oceans. Let's dive into the twisted, confusing, and often unbelievably shaped countries and regions, past and present, that might make you do a double take when you look at the map. Lithuania, the African twin? At first glance, Lithuania seems pretty ordinary, compact, almost circular. Nothing unusual going on here, right? But take a closer look. Put its shape next to a map of Africa. Weirdly enough, the resemblance is uncanny. That edge on the side where Madagascar would sit? Lithuania's got a little bump in exactly the same spot. Coincidence? Maybe. But it's probably the most normal country to ever be called a doppelganger for an entire continent. Thailand, the narrow stretch. Thailand's upper part flows down naturally. Looks kind of like a tilted head. But the further south the border goes, the thinner it gets. At one point, it squeezes into a sliver that's just 11 kilometers wide. That's thinner than most cities. Imagine living on a strip of land that stretches for more than 1,600 kilometers, and then suddenly tightens into a bottleneck before spilling into another full region. It's like someone took a map and forgot to zoom out while drawing the bottom part. Canada, normal, until the north. Most people think of Canada and imagine a wide, snowy country full of moose and maple syrup. Pretty standard looking, right? But go north, way up into the Arctic territories, and the shape starts to fall apart. Canada owns Nunavut, a territory with over 36,000 islands, many of which look like they were thrown at random into the Arctic Ocean. Then there's Hudson Bay, a giant watery hole right in the middle of the country. It's almost like someone scooped out a massive chunk just for fun. Chile, the ultimate no east, no west. Chile is basically a line, a very long, very thin line. It stretches across the western edge of South America for over 4,200 kilometers. That's the same length as the continental US from coast to coast. But its width, just around 177 kilometers on average. Try telling someone you live in East Chile. Doesn't really work, does it? It's all one vertical strip, a ribbon of land between the Pacific Ocean and the Andes. Beautiful, yes. Weird? Absolutely. Denmark, the island cluster that could, tiny, flat, and generally peaceful. Denmark doesn't seem like a shape oddball, but it's made up of over 400 islands packed into a space that's smaller than the state of West Virginia. Its capital, Copenhagen, sits on the largest island, Zealand, not to be confused with New Zealand. But what makes it even weirder is that the Kingdom of Denmark includes Greenland, a territory that's over 50 times bigger than Denmark itself. The kingdom's territory stretches from icy tundras to cozy European towns, a shape that's anything but uniform. Italy, the fashion boot. Italy's shape might just be the most iconic on the map. It's the only country that consistently gets compared to footwear. People call it the boot, and for good reason. The country's landmass literally kicks into the Mediterranean, and that's not all. It comes with accessories. Sardinia and Sicily are like the heel and toe of the boot. Sardinia is actually closer to France, but Italy's claim makes its outline all the more stylishly strange. Greece. Mainland. What mainland? Looking at Greece is like watching someone break a vase and scatter the pieces into the Aegean Sea. The mainland itself has jagged coastlines, but what really adds to the chaos are the over 6,000 islands, many of which are just floating specks, some close enough to Turkey that you could swim across. There's no real central shape to speak of. It's all fragments, edges, corners, overlapping territories. Greece's shape is more like a shattered mirror than a solid country. The Philippines, a nation of islands. If Greece is shattered glass, the Philippines is confetti. Over 7,600 islands scattered across the western Pacific. Of those, around 2,000 are inhabited. It's like someone dropped puzzle pieces into the sea and said, "Yep, that's a country." There's no real mainland, just scattered pieces. Some narrow like Palawan, a long island stretching 425 kilometers in a thin sliver. It's not just a nation of islands, it's a jigsaw spread out over hundreds of miles. Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan, the enclave tangle. These three countries are the ultimate border puzzle. Central Asia already has some of the strangest shapes, but this trio takes it to another level. Uzbekistan alone has 4 enclaves entirely surrounded by Kyrgyzstan, and Kyrgyzstan throws one back by placing an enclave of its own inside Uzbekistan. Then Tajikistan adds to the chaos with 3 more enclaves, 2 in Kyrgyzstan and 1 in Uzbekistan. It's like someone spilled ink on the border map and just decided to run with it. Iran, a nation with squiggles. Iran's shape is all kinds of awkward. While it looks generally solid, zoom in and you'll notice little arms, legs, and corners that just jut out. One part is even cut through by Armenia, splitting it in odd ways and creating multiple enclaves and narrow borders. It's like the edges were drawn with a shaky hand. Jagged lines and strange border bulges make Iran a prime candidate for one of the most uneven countries in terms of shape. Malaysia, a country in 2 pieces. Malaysia isn't one country, at least not geographically. It's split into 2 large land masses. The western half sits snugly on the Asian mainland, while the eastern half is on Borneo, sharing the island with Indonesia and Brunei. Here's the twist. Even the eastern side isn't whole. Brunei cuts right through it, slicing Malaysia's territory in half once again. It's like someone took a cleaver to a map and said, "Perfect. Norway, the long ribbon." Norway is long, really long. It stretches up the Scandinavian peninsula like a string of coastline that just won't quit. It shares a long border with Sweden and curves all the way up to touch Russia in the northeast. But it's not just the length. Norway's coast is insanely jagged, full of fjords, cliffs, and over 239,000 islands scattered along its edge. Imagine trying to draw that coastline by hand. You'd run out of ink. Neutral Moresnet, the tiny triangle. Not all weird shapes are huge. Neutral Moresnet was a tiny slice of land caught between Belgium and Prussia, modern-day Germany. It was shaped like a triangle, about 3.5 square kilometers in total, and existed for over 100 years. It was so small, yet so oddly placed and governed by 2 different nations at once. A geopolitical oddity with a shape as strange as its story. The Gambia, a country built around a river. The Gambia isn't just small, it's narrow, really narrow. And it hugs the Gambia River so closely that the entire country looks like a snake slithering through Senegal. In fact, Senegal completely surrounds it except for a tiny stretch of coast. The Gambia exists because of the river, and its shape tells that story better than any textbook could. But here's where it gets even stranger. From one side of the country to the other, the width rarely stretches beyond 50 kilometers. You could walk across it in a single day if you really wanted to. It's like someone drew the borders by tracing the riverbanks and stopped just far enough out to call it a country. It's not shaped like a nation, more like a river corridor with sovereignty. And that shape isn't random either. It traces back to the colonial tug-of-war between the British and the French. Indonesia, the island Colossus. Indonesia is almost too scattered to count. It stretches across more than 17,000 islands, covering over 5,000 kilometers from west to east. It spans 3 time zones and yet doesn't really have a central landmass. It's like a country made of pearls, each island unique, floating across the sea. Then, there's the straight-line border on Papua, where one island is awkwardly sliced in half between Indonesia and Papua New Guinea. Nature never intended that line to be there. Croatia, the coastal snake. Croatia has one of the weirdest outlines in modern Europe. Picture this. Bosnia and Herzegovina is almost landlocked, and Croatia is the reason why. It wraps around Bosnia like a Pac-Man about to gobble it up. And the coast? Croatia grabs nearly all of it, leaving Bosnia with just 20 kilometers of shoreline. Croatia's shape is a curl, a hook, and a squeeze, all rolled into one. India, enclave central. India's borders aren't just confusing, they're legendary. The Northeast has one of the most complicated cluster of enclaves on Earth, especially when it comes to Bangladesh. At one point, there were 111 Indian enclaves inside Bangladesh, and vice versa. And just when things got wild, there were enclaves inside enclaves. Imagine a piece of India, surrounded by Bangladesh, surrounded by another piece of India. Yeah, it actually existed. Middle Francia, the slice of Europe, once a part of the mighty Frankish Empire, Middle Francia was carved up in the 9th century. Its shape looked like someone sliced Europe from north to south, straight through modern-day France, Germany, Italy, and the Low Countries. It was thin, long, and absolutely impractical. The shape made travel a nightmare and governance even worse. No wonder it didn't last long. British India. Empire within an empire. British India was a colonial patchwork that looked more like a jigsaw puzzle than a nation. It included provinces directly ruled by the British and hundreds of princely states under indirect control. The result? A fragmented shape full of awkward lines and chunks of territory scattered across the subcontinent. On maps, it looked like two overlapping empires. And in practice, that's exactly what it was. French Polynesia, the oceanic giant. And finally, number 1. French Polynesia isn't just oddly shaped, it defies what people expect from a country. It's a collection of 118 islands scattered across a space of nearly 4 million square kilometers in the Pacific Ocean. The land itself? Only about 4,000 square kilometers, less than Rhode Island. But the space it spans covers 3 time zones. If you took that area and slapped it over Europe, it would stretch from Portugal to Ukraine. French Polynesia isn't just bizarre, it's surreal. From narrow ribbons to island mosaics and everything in between, these were history's most bizarrely shaped nations. Some still exist, others are long gone. But all of them prove one thing: borders don't always follow logic. They follow history, geography, politics, and sometimes chaos. If this blew your mind even half as much as these borders twisted ours, don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit that bell. And hey, drop a comment with the weirdest shaped country you've seen. For more incredible geographic quirks, check out the next video popping up now. Until next time, keep exploring and keep questioning the map.